You grew up in a house full of people and still felt completely alone, not because no one was there, but because no one was really there for you, not in the way you needed. You felt things so deeply, so intensely, so constantly, that you learned to carry it all in silence. You'd sit with the weight of your mother's unspoken sadness, your father's buried frustration, your siblings' anxiety, all of it landing in your chest like it was yours to hold. And when you tried to talk about what you were feeling, you were met with confusion, dismissal, or that look that told you something was wrong with you for feeling so much. So you stopped talking. You started watching instead. And that is exactly why today you see people in ways that most will never understand. There's a particular kind of loneliness that belongs to the child who was too sensitive for their environment. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It's quiet and it's heavy, and it lives in the space between what you felt and what you were allowed to say. You noticed the shift in your parents' energy before they said a word. You felt the tension at the dinner table like electricity in the air. You knew without being told when someone was lying, when someone was hurting, when something was very wrong. And the strangest, most painful part, no one else seemed to notice. Or if they did, they didn't talk about it. So you questioned yourself over and over again. Am I imagining this? Am I being dramatic? Why do I feel everything so loudly when everyone else seems fine? You weren't imagining it. You were perceiving it. There is a profound difference between those two things, and no one ever taught you that. Instead, you were handed silence, and over time you learned to become a student of it. You learned to read what wasn't said, to feel what wasn't shown, to understand what no one would explain. You didn't just survive your emotionally unavailable environment. You developed a kind of intelligence inside of it, one that most people never acquire because they never had to. And that intelligence, it is one of the most extraordinary things about you. Here is what science and psychology are beginning to understand, and what your lived experience has always known. Children who grow up without a safe emotional outlet don't simply cope, they adapt. And the adaptation of a sensitive child in an emotionally isolated environment is nothing short of remarkable. You became, without anyone teaching you, one of the most perceptive kinds of people alive. Let's talk about what actually happened inside you and why it matters. The first thing you developed was something researchers call hypervigilance, but not the clinical, frightening version people often associate with trauma. For you, it became a finely tuned radar. Because no one told you what was happening emotionally in your home, you learned to read microsignals, tiny flickers of expression, shifts in tone, the way a person holds their shoulders, the specific silence that means anger versus the silence that means grief. You became fluent in a language that most people don't even know exists. You may have noticed that you can walk into a room and immediately sense the mood without a single word being spoken. You may have noticed that you often know what someone is about to say before they say it. You may have noticed that you pick up on dishonesty, not because you're suspicious, but because something in the air feels off, and your body registers it before your mind can name it. This isn't magic. It isn't coincidence. It is the direct result of years of careful, unconscious observation. You trained yourself out of necessity to be extraordinarily present to the emotional world around you. The second thing that happened is that your inner world became incredibly rich. When you couldn't talk to anyone outside of yourself, you turned inward. You processed everything internally, And in doing so, you developed a depth of self-reflection that most adults never reach. You thought about why people behave the way they do. You wondered about your own feelings with a curiosity and an intensity that others simply didn't apply to themselves. This is why, as an adult, you often understand yourself and others on a level that genuinely surprises people. It's why friends come to you with their hardest problems. It's why strangers open up to you within minutes. You have spent your entire life becoming a student of the human emotional experience. Of course you're perceptive. You have been practicing since childhood. The third thing, and this one is important, is that you learn the difference between what people say and what people mean. In an environment where adults weren't honest about their emotions, where feelings were buried beneath "I'm fine" and performative normalcy, you became a decoder. You stopped taking surface-level communication at face value, not because you were distrustful, but because you had learned that the truth usually lived one layer beneath the words. This is why you often feel things about people that you can't quite explain, why you'll have a nagging sense about someone's pain even when they're smiling, why you catch what others miss. You learned early and deeply to listen to what isn't spoken. And here is the insight that might stop you in your tracks. The very thing that was hardest about your childhood, the isolation, the emotional loneliness, the feeling that you had no one to truly talk to, was also the forge in which your greatest gift was shaped. That doesn't mean it was okay. That doesn't mean it didn't hurt, or that the hurt doesn't still live somewhere inside you. It means that you took something painful and your extraordinary inner life transformed it into perception, into depth, into an ability to truly see people. You didn't just survive being unseen. You became someone who ensures that others feel seen. Now, knowing all of this, what do you actually do with it? Because here's the thing about being this perceptive. It can become its own kind of exhaustion if you're not intentional about how you hold it. The first shift is learning to distinguish between your feelings and the feelings you've absorbed from others. This is something that no one probably ever modeled for you, and so it may feel unfamiliar at first. But your perceptiveness means you are constantly picking up emotional information from the people around you. Without discernment, it all gets tangled together inside you, and you carry it as if it's yours. So begin to ask yourself, especially when you feel suddenly heavy, anxious, or sad without an obvious reason, is this mine? Sometimes just asking the question creates enough space to feel the answer. You might realize that what you're feeling belongs to the conversation you just had, or the energy in the room you walked into, or the friend whose distress you absorbed 3 hours ago. Once you can identify it as not yours, you can begin to set it down. The second shift is learning to honor your perception without immediately using it in service of everyone else. This is the pattern that most empaths with your background fall into. You spent your childhood using your sensitivity to navigate other people's emotions, to keep the peace, to anticipate needs, to protect yourself by understanding everyone around you. And that became your default. You see someone's pain and you move toward it. You sense a need and you fill it. And while that is beautiful, it is also quietly depleting you. Your perception is not only a tool for others, it is also information for yourself. Begin to turn that same careful attention inward. What do you need right now? What does your body feel? What has the last week been costing you emotionally? And what would genuinely restore you? You deserve to be read as carefully as you read everyone else. The third shift is perhaps the most profound. Let yourself be known. The child you will learn that your emotional inner world wasn't safe to share. And so you built walls, not hard, cold ones, but invisible ones. Ones made of capability and attentiveness and always being the one who holds space for others. And those walls have kept you lonely in ways you might not have even fully named. But you are not that child anymore. There are people in this world who are capable of receiving you, who will not be overwhelmed by your depth, who will not tell you that you feel too much. Finding even one person like that and letting yourself be genuinely, vulnerably known by them is one of the most healing things you can do. You were never meant to carry all of this alone. Here is what I want you to hold on to after this video is over. The child who had no one to talk to didn't become broken. They became someone who listens better than almost anyone. They became someone who walks into a room and feels the whole emotional landscape of it. They became someone who holds people's pain without flinching, who sees through pretense to what's real, who understands the human heart with an intimacy that is genuinely rare. That child was you, and that child deserves so much more than silence. They deserve someone who matched their depth, who sat with them in the big feelings instead of dismissing them, who said, yes, I feel it too. You are not alone in this. I can't go back and give that to you. But I can tell you now, clearly, without any softening, what you carry is not a burden. It never was. It is a form of intelligence that the world does not have enough words for yet. The loneliness that shaped you, the sensitivity that others couldn't hold, the feelings that had nowhere to go, all of it became the raw material of something extraordinary in you. You are not too much. You have always been exactly enough. You just needed to find the spaces where that is understood. If this is the kind of conversation you've been looking for, the kind that actually names what you feel and treats your inner life with the seriousness it deserves, then I'd love for you to stay. There is so much more ahead. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment below telling me what is one thing you perceived as a child that no one else around you seemed to notice. I read every single one, and I'd genuinely love to hear from you.